So what we're going to talk about today is really an introduction, and I want to focus on a couple of things. First, we're going to talk a little bit about the Travaux Préparatoires. So when you're looking at the negotiating history of a treaty, some places that you can go that are available for you to find the related documents that relate to the negotiating of a treaty. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Audiovisual Library of International Law and about the UN Diplomatic Conferences website. We're going to spend the bulk of the time on the UN treaty website, looking at the multilateral treaties deposited with the Secretary General. This is sometimes called the Status of Treaties database, and at the UN treaty series. And then I'm going to end the session by showing you just a few secondary sources that it's good to know about if you're doing research about treaties, or if you're looking for some treaties that maybe for whatever reason you can't find within the UN treaty collection. So I just wanted to start by talking again about this negotiating history of treaties and talk about one of the products that the UN has, which is called the Audiovisual Library of International Law here. It's available in this website and this link here, but if you Google Audiovisual Library of International Law, you'll be able to find it. What it is this platform. It's freely available, and there's some really good stuff here when you're looking to see how a particular UN convention or treaty has been negotiated in the past. So it's got different sections to it. And the section that we use here in the library a lot is this historic archive section. What this historic archives has is a list of different instruments that have been negotiated under the auspices of the UN. And it will give you a procedural history and the related documents to it. So for instance, if I go under Law of Outer Space and I click on this one here, on the use of outer space, they're all kind of organized in the same manner. So you've got your introductory note, which is available in the 6 official languages. In that introductory note, you might find you've got sort of a background about this particular treaty. And if I scroll all the way to the bottom, in this case, it's also got some related material, legal instruments, some documents, and some related doctrine as well. So articles, books on the topic as well. So it's written by a legal scholar. It's available in all 6 official languages there. So it just gives you an introduction to that particular treaty. Under procedural history, again, available in the all 6 official languages, what you'll see here is how this treaty moved through the UN system. So in this case, you can see it was there was a resolution in the General Assembly to reach a disarmament agreement, and then it talks a little bit about what the first committee did, the Outer Space Committee, and then further down it talks about the work that the legal subcommittee did in the negotiating of it. So it sort of gives you a narrative description of how this treaty went through the UN system. The part that can be very, very useful here is this Documents tab here. So this Documents tab will cite the relevant documents. So these are the travaux here. So you can see some selected documents that make up part of the history of this treaty. Now, in some cases, these will be hyperlinked, but you can see not always that they are. And in fact, sometimes the hyperlinks don't work. So whenever you have a document symbol, you can go to the digital library, or you can go to undocs.org, and you can just type in your document symbol here, and then you can find the document there. So you can note down the document symbol and then find it in other resources. There's usually videos, audios, photos, and when you're on the documents here, you can just click to the text of the treaty to see the treaty itself. They're all sort of organized the same way. So if I go under disarmament, you'll see the same thing. The introductory note has not yet been published, but you've got your procedural history, your documents, status, videos, photos. So that's the historic archives. It's kind of the bulk of this website, and especially when you're looking for those documents related to a particular instrument of the UN, that's one place that I would go. Just want to point out as well, there's another tab here called Lecture History. And under Lecture History, there are some lectures done by legal practitioners and legal scholars on different legal topics. And if I scroll down here, you'll see there's one on law of treaties. And if I look here under Law of Treaties, there's 2 videos related to some practical aspects of treaty laws related to the depository function of the Secretary General. That's in English and in French. And then there's another one that's related to treaty registration under Article 102, also in English and French. And then the other place that's related to treaties specifically on this site that I would point out is under Research Library here. You've got Research Library, which provides you with links to various resources related to international law, and there is a section on treaties. The section on treaties will have some links to various collections that are maintained by the UN. So for instance, if you were looking for treaties related to civil aviation, those are actually going to be maintained by the International Civil Aviation Organization, but the link is available here. Likewise, anything related to, say, for instance, intellectual property, if I click on this link here, just open it in a new tab, you'll see it brings me to the WIPO page related to WIPO treaties. I can click on this, I can see who the contracting parties are. So if I want to see status, I can see that there. One tab over, we have the collections maintained by states. So if for whatever reason you need to check to see what Argentina has in its treaties digital library, there's a link that's available there. As well, there's one for Australia, and you can go down the list and see links to various treaty websites or treaty databases that are maintained by member states. Finally, one tab over, we have this collections maintained by other entities. And so here we have some things that are not UN, not member states, but something like, for instance, the International Humanitarian Law, which if you were looking for the Geneva Conventions that are maintained by the ICRC, you will find it there. So you can see the state parties and signatories for the Geneva Conventions. So I just wanted to point that out, especially if you're looking at that, the negotiating history, this historic archives, you just go under whatever instrument it is. If you go under list of instruments, you have your full list of all the ones that are in this library, and then you just click on whatever one it is, and then you go to procedural history or documents to find your list of documents. So I wanted to point that out as a resource, and just so you're aware of it. Yeah, so the historic archives, I've talked about that. The lecture series, so there are some lectures on law of the treaties, and there's 2 in particular that are related to the practical aspect that the UN does in terms of being a depository for them, and in terms of being registering and publishing these treaties. The research library, you've got the links to various treaty collections that are maintained by the UN, maintained by member states, and maintained by other entities. The other place I want to point you to for for these negotiating histories of treaties is the Diplomatic Conferences website. So this is also maintained by the Office of Legal Affairs, the Codification Division. And what is on this page here is the documents or the official records from a lot of diplomatic conferences where they were negotiating agreements here. So for instance, you've got the Law of the Sea, you've got all 3 conferences. So if I were to click on the 3rd conference here, you could search all of the documents from the Law of the Sea conference here, or if I go into a particular volume here, you've got your different meeting records, your summary records, and your related documents. And you can search particular volumes, or you can just scroll down. When I click on one here, you'll see that it's available in English in this case, and it brings me to that particular document. But if you have your document symbol, again, you can check the UN Digital Library and just see if it's available in another language from there. But you've got the sort of the official records, they are available on this website. So that's the diplomatic conferences one. It's linked to from our website. But again, if you Google diplomatic conferences UN, you should be able to find it. Those are just some sources I wanted to point out before I talked about the treaty website itself. So the treaty website, this is the place you go for UN treaty information. You can find it at treaties.un.org. And I'm going to point out a few features on the website, and then I'll talk a little bit about the two sort of databases within here. So from this homepage here, you've got your overview with your glossary. So if you want to know, for instance, when I talk about registration and publication, what that means, this will explain it. It references the Vienna Conventional Law of Treaties here. I can find that information there. I can check again what is meant by entry into force, reservations, all the things that are available there. The other thing I want to point out here as well, from the home page, if I scroll down to the bottom, there is a website user guide. So if at any point you want to refer to a print guide that explains how to search various parts of the treaty website, this is a good place to go for that. And it's just available down here on the website user guide. There is as well this automated subscription services. So you can register to be a new user there, and then you can be notified as information is updated in the treaty collections there. Once you've registered, you know, and it gets approved by the treaty section, then you can select what sort of notifications you would like to receive. The other thing I want to point out, along with the databases and the website guide as well, is these three handbooks that are available here. So one is the Treaty Handbook. This is available in all 6 official languages. It's a publication that's been prepared by the treaty section, and it sort of explains basically treaty law and the treaty framework of the UN. So if you wanted to know a little bit more about what it meant to be consent to be bound, what ratification means, what accession means, what reservations mean, this is a really good source to go, and you can look up, you know, what a treaty or international agreement means, contacting the treaty section, all that information is there. So sort of created for member states, but it's publicly available on the website, and it's a good handbook to refer back to. I often just do, when I'm looking for something, I do a Control F and search for whatever it is that I'm looking for, let's say reservations. And then I can go to that section, and it can explain to me what is meant by reservations, what the Vienna Convention says on that, and that information is there. The Final Clauses Handbook is very similar to the treaty handbook, but it's related to the final clauses of multilateral treaties. And so it's things like authentic languages, who can participate, what the role of the depository is, that sort of thing. So you can see, for instance, here it will tell you the difference between the All States formula and the Vienna formula for participating in treaties. My general rule of thumb when I'm doing sort of research and I want to know exactly why something is somewhere, I will check the treaty handbook. If it's not in the treaty handbook, I check the Final Clauses handbook. I also, of course, check our book collection on treaties as well. But this is available from your desktop. It is in all 6 official languages. There's also the summary of practice. This is related to the role of the Secretary General in the exercise of the depository function. So sort of explains what the treaty section is doing as far as these multilateral treaties are concerned. So those are things I want to point out on this website just as resources that are useful to know about. I think the next place I'm going to go is into the depository collection and talk about the status of treaties. But I'm just going to go back to my PowerPoint and just make sure I've covered everything. So yeah, we've got our FAQ, we've got the resources for the practitioners. So those are like the treaty handbook. You've got your status of treaties database. There's a UN treaty series database, the League of Nations treaty series, they're there. You have the ability to register for alerts by filling in that automated subscription service. This is the status of treaties. It's got over 650 multilateral treaties that have been deposited with the Secretary General. So if the treaty says that the Secretary General is the depository, it means that you can find them on this website. It will tell you who are participants in these treaties, any declarations or reservations or communications that are available there, and it gives you the latest consolidated status. So it's 650, it's ones where the Secretary General is the depository. And if I click here, you can see it brings you to this page here, which is sort of organized by chapter because this used to be a book. In fact, if you want to find old book copies, you can find them here. So if I wanted to say, look for environmental treaties, if I click on chapter 27 here, I've got my list of all environmental treaties. If I scroll down, you can see there's my United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, there's the Kyoto Protocol, there's the Doha Amendment, there's the Paris Agreement. Say I want to look at the Paris Agreement as an example here. When I click on this one here, I get a link to the certified true copy. I get notes, any notes that have been added here, and I get a list of participants and when they've signed it, when they've potentially ratified it, accepted, or how they've entered into it, how they've consented to be bound. And then you find down at the bottom any declarations. Sometimes you'll find here some footnotes with some explanations about these various treaties. And if I look at the very top, you'll see that it says that this is the status as of this morning. Yes, this morning at 10:15. So this is updated from today. And sometimes when you see in references, in footnotes, references to chapter 27, 7D, that's what that is. It's this page that is here. And then you can go into a particular section and scroll. You could also look for a particular status of a multilateral treaty deposited with the Secretary General by going under this title and just typing in your keyword that you're looking for. So when I type in International Criminal Court, you can see I get the Rome Statute there. I also get the Agreement on Privileges and Immunities, the International Criminal Court. Same thing, it will tell me when it entered into force. There's a link to the certified true copy. In this case, there's a link to the treaty series. It will tell me when this treaty was adopted and give me some more information there. And again, it's got my list of participants. It tells me up here how many signatories there are and how many parties there are. The other thing I want to point out from the status of treaties page is this historical information. So the historical information will tell you a little bit about participants in treaties. So for instance, if I click on Aruba here, it says see notes 1 and 2 under Netherlands. And so then I can go under Netherlands here, and this will tell me that note 1 tells me that it is formally called Netherlands. Note 2 tells me about the relationship of the island of Aruba that's there. And then you can see there's a few more notes that are there. There's a note for New Zealand, etc. So when you're sort of looking at some historic information, as states may have changed or their status may have changed, you can find that there. This introduction here just tells you a little bit about the database. And then there's a full text search. But when you're searching the full text search, what you are searching is this information. You're not searching the treaty itself, you're searching participants, that sort of thing. So I've never used it. It's potentially useful, but as I said, I've never used it myself. On the side here, you can find depository notifications. So if you wanted to search for depository notifications, you can do that there. So you can just select who your participant is, and certified true copies are available here. And you can see again, it's in the certified true copies, it's organized in the same chapter format. You could also do a title search, and it's going to get you the certified true copy of those treaties. So that's the status of treaties. It's telling you information about the treaties. It's not necessarily giving you the treaty itself. The treaty itself is usually contained within, it's either the certified true copy that's there, or it's contained within the UN treaty series. So that's found under this registration and publication. So that's the depository treaties. The other big database within the treaty information website is the UN treaty series. So this has over 250,000 treaties as compared to these over 650 treaties that you find within the multilateral treaties, the status of treaties. This will have the text of the treaties. And it will have multilateral treaties. It will have bilateral treaties between two countries. The treaty text will be available in English, French, and whatever the authentic languages of the treaty are. And so you can always find it in English, French, and then whatever the authentic language is. And it includes the entire UN treaty series. It also includes treaties that have been registered but have not yet been published into the UN treaty series. So more recent ones are also included in that registration and publications here, UN treaty series.
Somebody's asking for tips on how to find depository notifications. They say, I've not had much luck finding notifications using the filters unless I know the exact number of the notification already, which I think we've experienced that as well. So maybe you can speak.
Yeah, so for the depository notifications, I will admit that I hadn't prepared any sort of treating for this. If you do have the reference number, you can search by there. You can also search by your participants. So if you know you're looking for a particular one there, and your year. Like what I would generally advise anytime that you're searching these websites or these pages is to use all of these functionalities that are available here. So if you, for instance, when you are looking at the UN treaty series, for sometimes, like I am able to find a treaty when I know like the place of conclusion, and I'm not able to find it other ways. You know, you've got your drop-down menus here, and you just have to, you know, if you have your treaty reference, I think that's the best way to find it. So just, you can go, when you're in the status of treaties here, you can search for the title. It sort of depends on how you're trying to search for that depository notification. If you're searching for it and you know who the member state is that you're looking for, or if you know the title of the treaty that you're looking for, or if you know the depository notification number. Anytime that you have problems, you can always contact us. But as I said, this treaty reference, so like if I were to go down to, like I know, for instance, that Paris one is, if I remember correctly, it is this treaty reference. So that means it's chapter 27, 7D. If I click here and click on search, then I get all of the ones related to that particular treaty. So yeah, that's what I would say maybe for the searching for the depository notifications is the treaty reference is probably a good point. Or if you were looking based on participant, you know, you choose your participant here. So just go under this search notifications and look there. And then, you know, use what information you have would be my tips. So a lot of that's going to apply when I'm talking about the treaty series online as well. You can see there's a number of ways that you can search. So you've got your advanced search here, which is the default, but you can also search by volume. So if you have reference to a UN Treaty Series volume, you can just type in whatever volume it is. Let's say I go 465, click on search. And there I'm going to get to the Treaty Series volume, that's 465, and I'm going to find all of the treaties there. So if I have a reference and it's referencing a volume number, I can search by volume number here. You can also search by the treaty title, or you can search by participants here. And then there's a full text search, which I haven't tried, I will admit. What I tend to use is that default setting, which is that advanced search. And you want to sort of build basically based on what information it is you're looking for. Oh, by the way, you can search by depository notification there by choosing that depository notification. Yeah, but I might actually do that under the status of treaties depository notification. You can do it from this treaty website here. You can also search by action. So if you'll see your filters will change depending on action. So if there's like a communication, you can find that there, territorial exclusion or application. And you can search certified true copies, maps, or treaties. I'm just going to show you an example with treaties here. So I have an example here. I just say show all agreements, and then I choose my filters. So this is again where I say, use what you have, the information that you have. So if you know the date of conclusion or you know who the depository is. So sometimes we found treaties, like let's say we can't find it anywhere else, but we might know who submitted it. So we can search under that sort of information. So, but if you're searching, say, for instance, for participant, you can choose that. And this is why I recommend the advanced search, is because you can filter by participant, and then you can add more filters as well. So if I were to say, choose Australia and Austria, I choose my filters here. It goes over to this one here. I match all of these values, which means that I want treaties that both Austria and Australia have signed. I add it to the search criteria. Then I click on search. Just note here, it says a maximum of 500 results will show up. So if when you get here and you see a record count of 500, it means there might be more than that. It just stopped at 500. So you might want to narrow your search. When you're here, you'll see you have your list of treaties that Australia and Austria are involved with. And you can see this first one is actually, it's a UN ECE regulation related to driving. And so both, if I click on the title here, I can see the authentic text. So it will tell me what language versions this text is available in. It will give me when it entered into force, and I've got the link to the relevant document that is there. If I wanted to, I can say, okay, I can see it by registration date or date of conclusion. I can use these to sort. So I can get the most recent one, or I can get, for instance, the original one, or the oldest one, which you can see is actually a League of Nations treaty. I can tell by that LON there. I can also sort by treaty type. So if I want the bilateral ones at the top or the open multilateral ones, I can do that there. Or I can refine my search. Now, when you're refining your search, don't use the back button up here. Use the button that's available here. And you just filter by whatever it is you're looking for. So let's say I want a bilateral treaty. I can choose treaty type here, choose bilateral, add to search criteria. The thing you want to watch is this box here, because this box is telling you what you're searching. So I'm looking for Australia and Austria, and I want bilateral treaties. And there you can see I've got my list of bilateral treaties. I could refine it more if I wanted to, and I could filter by, let's say, English title, and I could put in whatever it is my my English title is. So if, let's say I say Social Security. Here I have the option of match this phrase, which is what I would want to do in this case. I want Social Security to appear together. I could as well choose match all of these words, which would also work because I'm asking the system to look for social and security. Or I could choose match any of these phrases where I'm looking for one or the other to appear. But I'm going to say match this phrase. And then search. And then you can see I get the bilateral treaties that have Social Security in the title. I can sometimes get a link to directly to the text of the document. Sometimes it will just link to the volume in the PDF and then I have to search through it. In this case, I've got when it entered into force and I've got the authentic text. So I know it's in German and English. So I can look for it. So I know that's the languages it's going to be available in, as well as French.
There's a question about registration numbers that I don't know the answer to. Do you know what the difference is between registration numbers that start with an A versus the ones that start with an I?
No, I don't.
The example you just had, like the first couple were A's and the second one, I don't know if it was because the first one was a protocol.
You can also search, so this is searching for bilateral treaties. If I wanted to do a new search, I can just remove this. And I can say it's filtered by English title. So if I wanted to do another search, just as an example, here, let's say I say mine ban, match all of these words, add to search criteria. You can see I'm getting treaties, but I'm not getting the one that I want, the anti-personnel one. So that's the other thing I would suggest is when you are doing a search by the title, make sure you have the title correct, because it's not necessarily going to pick it up if it's known by an informal name. So if I go mine ban treaty, I can see this one. This is the title of it, Convention of the use of, I'm not going to read this all out, but you can see the word ban does not appear. What appears is prohibition, and the word mines appears. So that's another tip is, like if you have a particular name of it, just make sure that you've got the correct one. And then if I search here, anti-personnel mines, and I choose match all of these words, because that's going to be my broadest search. And that's probably another tip that I would give you is because you can always refine your search. So if you keep it sort of broad, that really helps in seeing how many results you get. And so in fact, I could just even do, say, for instance, mines and then see what I get. And there you can see I get 13 results. And I get a number that are bilateral between the United Nations and a particular member state. So I can always go back and say, I want to filter by treaty type. And I can say open multilateral, for instance, and click on search. And there's my treaty that's there. And I can see what authentic languages it's in, when it entered into force, place and date of conclusion, the volume in the PDF, and the participants. So that's the UN Treaty Series. I'm just going to go back to my PowerPoint and see if there's anything I missed. I have my examples there. We're searching for a treaty. Again, when you want to modify your search, make sure you use this back button within it. The other thing I didn't point out, unfortunately, there's no way when you've done a search result here, I can't share this, but I can export it into Excel. So if I want to create a list of all the titles here, I can click on this export into Excel and I can get that information there. But I can't share my results page. And you can filter by treaty type, add to search criteria. And then when you click on that page, you get links to the treaty and more information about the treaty itself. So I'm going to move off the treaty website and just point out a few other last resources that are available to you. So I'm going to start with the freely available ones. So one resource that I really like, and I recommend to anyone, if they are ever looking at the laws of a particular country, is this one called GlobalX. It's basically research guides for international law, and it's for the legal systems around the world. So if I click on this one here, just to show you, so they've got international law research, comparative law research, foreign law research here. And if I use an example here with Belgium, for instance, this explains the Belgian legal system to me if I wanted to know, and it shows me resources where I can find information. So if I were to search for treaties, I can see that Belgium, the Foreign Affairs Department, has a treaties database with all the treaties since 1987. So if I can't find a treaty through the UN treaty website, maybe I can check the Belgian treaty database if I'm looking for treaties that Belgium has signed. It also, this website as well, so GlobalX as well, it's got the ones for all these different countries. But then, as I said, it also has international law research. So they have very in-depth guides related to the League of Nations, related to the United Nations, related to, I think there's ones on treaties. I know there's ones on treaties. Yeah, so international treaties, they've got different resources there on looking for that. So it's a really great resource. It's freely available. It's updated frequently. There's also treaties that are available through Worldly. So Worldly is a platform of laws of various countries. LI stands for Legal Information Institute, and it started with the Legal Information Institute out of Cornell, and then it grew. So there's CanLI out of Canada, Bailey out of the UK, and I would say there are varying levels of funding and various levels of effort put into these. It is a freely available resource, but it does have a treaties collection here. And so you can see there are treaties here for APEC, for ASEAN, the Irish Treaty Series is here, Pacific Island Treaty Series, NATO treaties. So there's lots of treaties that are available here. They usually will tell you, like if I go under the United, let's say I go under the Council of Europe one here, it will tell you that this treaty is based on information that was obtained from this website. So if you want to verify against the primary source, you can go there and see. African-Ly, very similar concept, so it's still a Legal Information Institute. It's not related to the Worldly one, but if you go here under African Legal Information, you've got legal instruments, and you can find instruments related to some of the African bodies here. If I choose, for instance, agreement, charter, or I search by my keywords here, I can find some information there as well. The World Treaty Index, I would say only reach out to this one if you're desperate, but what it does do is it covers the 20th century. So the UN will not necessarily cover earlier than the existence of the UN, with the exception of League of Nations treaties. But if you are looking for something that predates the UN, this World Treaty Index, the book volumes are very famous. We have them in the library. but there is an online interface to it. My experience with it, and you'll see when I click on it, it's very basic. So I would suggest searching by party, maybe by title. And then usually what I found is a lot of the information is coming from the UN treaty series. So if I just click on France as an example here, and I'm actually going to move off of this one because I was checking earlier and it didn't have, so you can see it's got treaties, bilateral treaties, and then when I click on any, it will tell me my primary source for this record is the UN Treaty Series Volume 3, page 57. But in my opinion, it's easier to search the UN Treaty Series site than it is this particular site here. So I guess know about it, know we have the print volume, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. Talking about subscription resources, we have people registered in this training that are coming from all different UN organizations, from the member states. So what you have access to will depend on a lot of factors. For people that are in UN headquarters or in the Secretariat, you will have access to our UN New York Secretariat staff. You'll have access to this through us. For people in Geneva, you have access to some materials through the Geneva Library. And then, it varies. So if you have any questions about access, you can type them into the chat or we can answer you at a later point. But I just want to point out some of the subscription resources that we have in the library that can be useful for you. So I am going to go here. And I'm going to go to research.un.org. So this is our research guide from the library here. And under electronic resources, we have our listing of electronic resources that we have subscriptions to. So this is for UN Library New York offices staff. You can see when it's got this Wi-Fi symbol, you should be able to get it. And if it's got a little thing here, you can have remote access. On the side here, I'm going to choose international law as my topic. And I'm going to just show you the foreign law guide. The foreign law guide operates a lot the same way that the Global X does. It's a research guide for foreign jurisdictions. So anytime you want to know, let's say I'm going to use Belgium again as the same example. It will give you an introduction to the legal system, to research guides, and it will give you some information about where you go for your primary sources of information. So some of those could have information about treaties. Then we have these ones that are all available on the same platform, which is the Oxford Public International Law platform. We have the Max Planck Encyclopedia of Public International Law, Oxford Scholarship Authorities on International Law, and Oxford International Relations. So if I go back to my research page here, electronic resources, international law here. So Oxford Scholarly Authorities on International Law is basically textbooks coming from Oxford University Press on international law topics. So you can see on the side here, this is what we have access to. So we're currently in Oxford Scholarly Authorities on International Law, but we can move around to the other resources that we have access to. So when I search, for instance, for treaties, let's say all states, just as an example here, you can see I'm getting a commentary on the United Nations Convention Against Torture, and I'm getting within a particular chapter within here. Here's something about the Treaty of the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, a commentary. So Oxford Scholarly Authorities on International Law is a really great place to go for those commentaries on treaties. So if you want to see both sort of the negotiating history, the text of the a particular article, and then analysis, article by article analysis of treaties, it's a really great place to go for that. Oxford International Organizations is basically going to have UN documents, ICJ cases, international organization materials that have been annotated. So for instance, if I were to look up the Paris Agreement here, this will tell me the core issues of this document. It sort of is giving me an outside perspective on the Paris Agreement, the background, a summary of it, the arrangements, and then withdrawal, and then some analysis about it as well as a link to a bibliography as well. And then the Max Planck Encyclopedia, which is also on this platform here. It's a really good encyclopedia when you're starting out with a particular topic and you want to see just a description of what it is and some understanding of it. It's a good place to start for any type of research on an international law topic. So I just want to point those out. We have Heinlein Online as well, which will have the U.S. Treaties and Agreements Library. We also have within that the Foreign and International Law Resources Database, which includes yearbooks of international law, which sometimes is a place where you can find treaties. And as well, we have the Law Journal Library, which includes the international legal materials, so the ILM, which is another source where you can sometimes find some treaties if you are stuck there. Finally, you can always check our catalog too. So if I'm here and I go to our website, un.org/library, I can just search for whatever treaty it is and see if there's any commentary. So let's say I want to look at, I think, convention, torture. And then if I add a word like commentary or analysis, this gets really good at finding those commentaries, which can be really useful for looking at what is out there in terms of books and articles. If I want to narrow to the print collection, I can do so here. For those of you who are coming from, say, outside the UN, you have this option to narrow to open access. And this gets you access to all of the material that is available online that you have access to that doesn't require a subscription as well. So you could choose open access as a filter, you could choose print as a filter, and you can choose, here, date of publication if you wanted to here. These commentaries, really, really useful. As I said, when you're looking at a particular convention. So there are commentaries on the Vienna Conventions on the Law of Treaties. And as well, in our collection, we have some treaty indexes, which can be really helpful, including that World Treaty Index that I mentioned before. But there's a few others too. So if you are looking for something that's maybe not available on the UN treaty website, you can contact us and we can see if we can find it there. We do have some treaty series of various countries too in print as well. I always like to end our training sessions by saying, part of the purpose of this training session is to let you know you can always reach out to us. So we have our frequently asked questions database here, so ask.un.org. Our email address is here, and anytime you're on our website, there is the option to contact us. So this is sort of just an overview. It's just an introduction. But if you do have any further questions, if there's something that's stumping you, let us know. We can maybe figure it out together. So with that, thank you very much for attending. It's nice to see so many people register for this session, and have a good day or evening, depending on where you are.